Zombies are a staple of pop culture. Movies, TV shows, books, and video games. They have become one of the most beloved horror creatures of all time. But with so many video games being based around zombies, it can be hard to stand out among the crowd. Today, I will be covering Project Zomboid, a very unique game that has taken zombie survival to a whole new level. Oh, and by the way, this video is sponsored by HelloFresh, but I'll tell you more about them later. This story starts with two friends, Andy Hodgetts and Chris Simpson, who hated their jobs working for large game studios and wanted to do something different. They formed their own game studio called The Indie Stone and started working on their first game called Pause. During this first project, they met Marina Su Chong, otherwise known as MASH, who soon became the main artist for The Indie Stone. If you're familiar with Project Zomboid, you may recognize the raccoon. If not, he's the community raccoon and is the mascot for restaurants in Project Zomboid. This is just one of the many references that you can see to the early days in Project Zomboid. Pause was being developed for Xbox Live Indie, but development was pushed aside when the team got the opportunity to work with Dan Marshall of Size 5 Games on a sex education game called Privates. This free game went on to earn a BAFTA, although it never earned any money. Chris states it was a massively worthwhile experience, but it put them in a jam. The team canceled Pause because the market wasn't interested in a game like that at the time. Money was drying up, and for weeks they could only afford to eat bread and beans. Then they got an idea to create a mock-up for a zombie game originally called Dead Territory. They felt that they could be the ones that create the zombie game, a game that made people feel the same way that they did when watching a zombie movie, a game that allowed you to act out what you would do if you were truly in a zombie apocalypse. This mock-up was the starting roots for Project Zomboid. They knew that the project would cost a rather large amount of money, plus they were tired of eating beans, so they decided to start crowdfunding. The team wanted to follow in the footsteps of Notch, the creator of Minecraft, and push their game to as many people as they could. They wanted their game to have no story, but rather allow the player to create their own in every playthrough, much like Minecraft. They posted screenshots of the game on their blog, and the images began circulating on forums. Although their goal was just to earn enough money for next month's rent, that goal was blown out of the water. There were so many people that wanted to help fund this game that it reportedly broke their website's servers. The team hadn't prepared for this much traffic and didn't build an automated system at the beginning, so everything was processed by hand. Chris and Andy were forced to take alternating sleep schedules in order to handle the influx of donations, but they still needed to find time to work on the game. Once the donations would begin to slow and they could catch up, the game would be shown off or talked about on another platform. Kotaku covered the game and the amount of donations flew up again. Although a great thing to happen to an indie dev studio, Andy and Chris state this is causing their first of many mental breakdowns, but the second was soon to come. Before we get into that, I'd want to tell you about today's sponsor. HelloFresh offers amazing meals like falafel power bowls and steak with potatoes and béarnaise sauce. Okay, to be honest, I don't know how to cook, but HelloFresh is allowing me to learn by sending me pre-portioned ingredients along with the recipes on how to use them. I'm also a broke college student, and HelloFresh is allowing me to save money and eat healthier instead of going out every night. HelloFresh works by allowing you to personalize your plan depending on how many meals that you want and how many people that you are going to feed with your meals. They offer Carb Smart and Calorie Smart options as well. You can also pick depending on what you like to eat. If you'd like to check out HelloFresh, you can use the code that's on the screen now or the link in the description to save money on your first order and get free shipping as well. Thank you, HelloFresh, for sponsoring this video. And speaking of the video, let's get back to it. While the team was dealing with donations, PayPal, which was the platform they chose to process payments, caught on that they were just receiving money but not delivering goods, which is against PayPal's terms of service. PayPal froze the money and the devs were put in a bad position. Project Zomboid was not yet ready for release, but in order to receive payment, they needed to deliver a game. So that's exactly what they did. Anyone that backed the game would receive a few small games, and once Zomboid was released, they would receive it for free. Through all of these events, the team continued to push towards releasing the first version of the game. But just 3 days before the game was due to be released, there just had to be one more setback, and an unusual one at that. After being up for about 48 hours tying up loose ends, getting the game ready for release, the team went to sleep and were woken up by police officers. They were forced to evacuate their apartment because their neighbor had turned his home into a bomb factory. The team wasn't allowed back into their flat for 3 days, but they were back just in time for the first release of the game. The team released a tech demo showing off their game. It was kind of a tutorial and story combined to show off what the game was like. Then they released a sandbox version shortly after. Unfortunately, the game was leaked, and unauthorized copies spread to many other websites. The unauthorized version of the game enabled downloading from Project Zomboid servers with the press of an Update Now button, regardless of whether the user already had the latest version. In order to avoid paying for these downloads, the Indie Stone took their customer-only paid version offline, and instead released a free public tech demo for download the next day. Notch even chimed in on Twitter during this time, stating, "Everyone stop pirating this game. Please. It's very cool. All of this pirating happened in June of 2011. In October, the team would face one of their worst setbacks yet. They moved into a new apartment and went out drinking for the night to celebrate. When they returned, they found their new home had been broken into. Their credit cards and laptops were missing. These laptops contained the last 2 months of work that hadn't been backed up onto the cloud. This of course resulted in severe delays in development. They informed the internet of what had happened via Twitter, and the community turned on the developers. Many claimed that they were fraudsters, just claiming all of this happened just to steal the money. The devs made a mistake and decided to bite back, but the internet bit back harder. Internet trolls set up in their Twitter and their forums, slandering the credibility of the devs and all their work that they had put into this game. However, some of their loyal community reached out and pushed them to keep going, and that's exactly what they did. Soon after, they gave a presentation at Rezzed called How Not to Make a Game. They went over their lessons that they had learned, and what to do and certainly what not to do. They also announced the release of version 0.2.0. With this version, they added many new features, but most importantly a modding feature, and encouraged users to mod their game. About a year later, they officially launched their game on Steam Early Access, and the devs continued to build this game exactly how they wanted it to be, a realistic survival simulation. With every new update, there were brand new features added to improve gameplay. Just look at the list on screen. I could dedicate an entire video covering the new additions since its Steam release. This is why Project Zomboid has become such a beloved game for so many. Although all these updates over time may not be able to compete with Build 41. It completely overhauled many parts of the game, including a new animation and movement system, better multiplayer functionality, a new city, and a new combat system. PC Gamer said that the devs could have stuck a 2 at the end of it and released an entire sequel to the game. After about a decade, this game went viral, bringing thousands of new players to the game, including me. Before the release of this update, the game averaged around 7,000 daily players, which is already a great number for an indie game. But shortly after the update, the numbers went above 5 digits for the first time in the game's history. It hit an all-time high of 65,000 players. Chris stated that streamers and YouTubers began making more content about their game, which helped it grow to its new level. And also, players began playing on RP servers, where they could live out their Walking Dead dream. With all of this, it's important to note that the game is still in early access and will continue to grow as time goes on. Chris also had this to say to PC Gamer: "Well, we won't quit until we consider it done, and we love the game dearly, but it's been a decade. There's obviously a burning desire to work on something new that any game dev gets after probably about a year or two. We've been suppressing that for far longer. That's why we're sticking with early access until we consider it done. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be something that we look back on without thinking, we never did get to do X though." There's a very clear list of what those things would be that we'd regret not getting to. Once it goes 1.0, I think a good amount of us will be done and itching to try something new after spending a good chunk of our lives dedicated to Zomboid. Chris adds, 1.0 wouldn't be the end of support for the game, and as the studio has always done, it avoids putting a firm deadline on it. From its rocky start to blossoming into a survival hit, the team behind this game has dedicated their lives to their dream. It is an understatement for me to say that I am inspired by their story. If you would like to check out Project Zomboid, there's a link in the description. And I'd also like to thank today's sponsor, HelloFresh, for giving me this opportunity to live out my dream. I will see you all next week. Thank you for watching.